Good evening, Wakefield. I call this meeting into order of August 18th. I ask that we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to attendance, I've got 5 of my counselors in the studio with us, and we have Counselor Chrisley on the Zoom, so we are all in attendance today. Item 4, public participation. Sherry, is there anyone online for public participation?
There is no one tonight.
Great, and there is no one in the studio. So we will move on to item 5, voting matters, hiring of the town administrator. So I was just going to go over a little timeline, so we're all kind of doing some level setting before we open up the discussion. So this is a reminder for most of the people at the table, but for people watching, I think it's nice just to have one voice kind of giving us the whole timeline. So former TA Steve Mayo let us know in December that he would be leaving. In March, after interviewing 2 firms, we hired Community Paradigm Associates as our search firm. We created a position statement that was posted by the firm with an application period to close on June 23rd. We created a website with all the information about the process. My colleagues and I have been available since, we've been available for input and feedback, some of us since December, some of us since they joined in April, and one since June. In May, we appointed a 7-member town administrator screening committee who were responsible for reviewing candidate applications and performing first-round interviews. At the same time, the search committee set out a public survey where 241 responses were received. After a few meetings, including interviewing of candidates, the screening committee ultimately provided 4 finalists to the town council for consideration. The search firm conducted background interviews and called references. The council interviewed those finalists on August 12th and August 14th last week. The hope is to announce a TA tonight. A contract committee will then work on getting a contract with a start date. And until that time, Kevin Gill will continue to serve as interim town administrator. So I just wanted to do some level setting. And then to say, since we haven't done this process for 17 years, we had to create a process. When I became chair in April, I took the lead to map out the process that was fair and moved at a reasonable pace. We had a majority of vote for each decision along the way when we hired the search firm, the makeup of the search committee, and the appointments to the search committee. Volunteers and staff have shown a dedication that is to be applauded, so thank you to everyone that served on the search committee. I am incredibly proud of the process to get to today's decision. Each conversation and interview has been respectful and informative. I ask my colleagues to continue the civility we have shown up to this moment. We don't need to agree, but as I said when we started this progress, not only are candidates offering their best selves to us, we have an obligation to show the best of Wakefield. We thank all the candidates who put their name forward and participated in our process, and we especially thank the 4 finalists who met with us last week. With that, I'm going to ask that we go around and each counselor reflect on their impressions of the interviews last week. I ask that each counselor state their top 2 from the 4 finalists. They don't need to be ranked, just the 2 that you would like us to move on for consideration. I see some nodding heads. Does that sound like a good process moving forward?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. Counselor Carney, can I ask you to begin?
Sure. Can we speak to them, or we just give the names?
Oh, no, I want you to talk about the whole process. I would love to know your thoughts. We didn't do this, so please, your thoughts, and then the top 2.
Yeah, well, without giving credit to some of the people in the community who are speaking up, and I think in a very, very poor manner, in attacking the one candidate that's coming from the town of Wakefield, like they ran for this board, like they have that much knowledge of what we do. I think it's shameful. They've discredited our former town administrator, Steve Mayo. They're talking about the fact, don't ever do that again. Don't ever do what we did when we hired Steve Mayo. And I was on the council when we hired Steve Mayo. And there was dissension then, all right? And the 2 people and I won't mention names here, but two people who didn't vote for Steve, nobody's bringing up the fact that years and years from then, their evaluations, they gave Steve great marks, okay, and supported Steve. And the fact that when each of those got into their later years and their health was not that good, Stephen picked them up at the house and delivered them to the meetings to bring them here. So when they sat discrediting Steve Mayo to attack a current candidate for this council, for the town administrator, it bothers me. So I believe Ann is the top candidate in my opinion. I believe the second candidate would be from the one from North Andover. And I want to say something, because people, I think she's excellent. I think she did the homework. I think she did a great interview. But she's really, her background is human resources. I mean, most of her experience is in human resources, and she's only one of four she's the only deputy, but she's only one of four people who are managing the administration in the town of North Andover, who is a little 5,000 more people than us, but it's not that she's managing all of the things as the deputy, but she's the only deputy. I thought she was excellent. But Ann brings something that I think the qualities that Steve Mayo had. She's from Wakefield. She's lived it. When Ann got off the town council, she went back to work on the committee, to the bylaws committee. During her time, even though she's busy, she's got another job. She's working hard at that job, a job she says she likes. That kind of experience, I think, is worthy. 9 years of it. I didn't have the academic background. This was not my forte. But she is in a field where she's studying that. And she went back and helped in knowing the bylaws. And if she knows the bylaws and she knows the town charter, that's half the battle. So I think Ann is my top candidate. And I would have the woman, Denise Casey, as my second candidate.
Thank you, Councilor Carney. Councilor Chines.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to start just by also thanking, the four candidates who we were able to speak with. I thought that they were all, very well prepared and very well suited for the role, and clearly had a skill set that would work in any number of communities. I also do want to make sure that we acknowledge again the work of the screening committee. And I remember Mr. Petrin, from our search firm, mentioned last week that it was, one of the most engaged and effective screening committees that he's worked with through the process. And so a lot of the work, all of the work that they did really happened behind the scenes because of the nature of how these searches work. But I think it's worth recognizing them for the great job that they did, and really the effort they put in to whittle us down from 20-plus candidates to 4 finalists. So as I think about my top choices, my first choice is Liz Hartsgrove from the town of Bourne. I thought that she was an extraordinary candidate, and there were a number of areas that really stood out to me in terms of the conversation. First, and probably most important for me, was I thought that she had the most comprehensive, intentional, organized, and sort of best practice-based approach to staff and performance management of any of the candidates, including sort of tangible examples of success she's had in other towns. I think of this role really as first and foremost a manager of people, a manager of an organization, and so I think that set of skills is incredibly important. I liked the fact that she talked about emphasizing documentation of policies and procedures to make sure that, we're focused not on sort of, what's been passed down verbally, but on actually making sure that we have tactical measures of success and tactical ways of doing things. I think we need some of that. I also appreciated that she understood that there's a through line from strategy to planning down to actual performance management and execution. I liked also her focus on customer service. That's something that we as a board have talked a lot about over the years. Again, she was able to point to a positive track record of engagement with the community. I also liked how she talked about customer service being tied to a mission and values, as well as the experience that she brings with design thinking. I thought she brought strong experience managing in difficult fiscal times and managing difficult negotiations when she talked about some of the situations on the Cape, particularly with the large infrastructure projects, talking about being able to negotiate a 0% COLA with some of the public sector unions during COVID as a way of saving jobs. That really resonated with me as well. She was intentional and inclusive around her approach to community engagement, giving the example of the library build in Bourne and some of the controversy there around the building. I liked that she had experience with business development going back to her time as a licensing agent in Provincetown. She did a lot of direct work on building and sustaining a commercial tax base, again, something that I think is very relevant to us. And she also just had a very practiced approach and, again, an evidence-based approach to how she would think about change management. So, again, I thought that she was an exceptional candidate. I think she has an opportunity and really the ability to be a transformational leader for our community. My second choice, I won't go into as much detail since I've talked a lot about Liz. My second choice was Denise Casey from North Andover. Similar to Liz, I thought that she had a really well-practiced and well-informed view around performance management. Not surprising, given that she has a background in human resources. I particularly liked when she talked about developing the process in North Andover, that she had a very inclusive approach to doing it and was collaborating with employees at all levels, including members of the unions. I really value, again, thinking of this customer service, perspective. The fact that she's bringing experience, kind of weaving together customer services and community services in North Andover. I think that's an opportunity here as well as we think about reducing silos. Very collaborative style, particularly around financial management, gave some good examples in terms of addressing COVID and how she worked closely with other folks in town. And I also appreciated that she talked a lot about making sure that we set clear expectations, both for her team in terms of making sure that we're able to execute projects, but also setting expectations around public engagement and civil dialogue. I thought that was something that was really critical and really important. So I see Denise as a very good candidate, many of the same strengths and skill sets as Liz. Again, I would say Liz was exceptional. Denise would be very, very good, and I think both of them would be great hires for us.
Thank you. Councillor Chrisley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Likewise, I was very impressed with the caliber of all four candidates that the search committee referred to the council. I think all of them had a lot of very solid strengths and could handle major parts of this very challenging, multifaceted job. Having said that, I did come down after, looking at going through the interviews and reviewing their responses to our questions. I think my top ranked candidate is Denise Casey from North Andover. Some of the reasons that stood out with her is she's had a long career in public service, municipal government, and administration. She's got 7 years experience as a deputy town administrator currently. And she's also worked in a variety of towns in the Boston metro area, which share a lot of similarities with the challenges of the Wakefield position. She's worked in North Andover, Wilmington, and I believe Lexington and Concord as well during her career. As mentioned earlier, she's got a lot of skills in hiring and managing a large staff of people. When one of the questions was asked of her, what her management style is, she said she refers to herself as an orchestra conductor type of manager, which I thought was a great analogy, given the number of staff and the number of skill sets that a job like a town administrator involves. Similar to Councillor Chines, I thought she made a very strong case for herself in how she handles performance management in the review and performance of both department heads and employees. But she also said, one of the things I liked about her candidacy was, she's never lived in a community where she's managed. And I think that kind of set her candidacy apart for me, because I think it shows that You can have your own particular interests and bias working in the community that you live in. And I think bringing, perspective from 4 or 5 other cities and towns at this juncture in Wakefield's history is a very important thing in the next town administrator. So that was kind of my high-level summary of what all of her strengths were. One other thing I really like that she invested the time to go around Wakefield and attend some of our events. She talked to employees of some of the town departments, and I thought that showed a great deal of personal dedication to the amount of time she would be investing by taking on a challenging position like this. My number 2 candidate is Liz Hartsgrove. I thought she had great experience. She's similar to my first ranked candidate, had a great deal of experience in municipal government at various levels. She had tackled a number of challenging projects in Bourne and in the other communities on the Cape where she's worked previously. Thought she had a very warm and engaging manner that I think would suit her very well as a town administrator. And like some of the projects and the innovative approaches that she demonstrated, as Jonathan mentioned, like the library rebuild for the town of Bourne, because legacy projects like that naturally attract a lot of strong feelings and opinions in any community where it's been around for a very long time. So these are my 2 top candidates. I think both of them have different palette of experiences and would handle the job in slightly different ways. But I felt that in my evaluation, I felt like the best set of experience and the best case that they made for themselves was the one that we heard from Denise Casey. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Fox.
Sure. So my top 2 are Denise and Liz. The reasons for Denise, as mentioned, I think she's the only candidate who spent time in town who didn't already live here. I appreciate that she spoke to volunteers in town, attended events, spoke to employees, been to restaurants in town. I like the fact that she lives close to Wakefield, but not in Wakefield. A big thing I heard when campaigning was our next town manager should come from outside of town. I think Danvers is just close enough to have her be in tune with the area we live in. She certainly did her research. I think she had some great ideas. She's over 20 years experience working municipal government. The reasons I like Liz, I think she had some really fresh ideas. Working on the Cape as she has presents challenges that we don't have here. It's a seasonal-based place. She mentioned the struggles they had when it's a rainy season, people aren't making money. How do you survive in a place like that? That showed me that she is open to fresh ideas and trying something different. I mean, to know that your neighbors are struggling and finding workarounds to help them get through the year, basically, if you're in a seasonal area like that. I really liked her enthusiasm. Also, over 20 years municipal experience. I just thought she was a very exciting candidate for this position. I think either one of these women would bring something great to our town that we don't have currently.
Thank you. Counselor Constance.
I have to echo what everybody said about the 4 candidates. I think that we're lucky as a town to have this field of choice. My first choice would be Denise Casey, and my reason there, I was very impressed with her thoughts about implementation of some of the long-range plans that towns have set, and I think that's a challenge for our town, is to execute against some of our aspirational ideas that we have. I was impressed with her discussions about how she does succession planning with her departments. I think that's going to be a key factor for us in the town. And I was also impressed by her thoughts about transparency and reaching out to the community and how she communicates with people of her town. And additionally, I think the way she comes to the town governance from an organizational point of view, I feel that that's something that we also need a fresh look at in Wakefield, which we talked about with all of the candidates. My second choice would be Liz Hartsgrove for many of the same reasons. I thought Liz was really, really impressive and had a very scientific approach to some of the challenges that we're facing in Wakefield. And I think that perspective would be really exciting and new for us. I think that if we were to choose Ann Santos, we would never, ever have a town administrator who would serve with as much love and passion as Ann would. Ann's a friend. Anybody who knows us knows that. And I think there is a lot of value, a tremendous amount of value to picking somebody from within the community. But at this point in where Wakefield is, it's my thought that selecting somebody from outside of the community serves almost as a unifying force. It's a different perspective, which I think we need in town. And the hope would be that there would be some unification from some of the dissension that we've heard among people. Granted, it's a small number of people who say some of the things that John, you referenced earlier. But I can't ignore it.
Thank you. Councillor Butler.
Sure. Thanks. I think in terms of both what Councillor Carney and Councillor Consta said, I'll just read out what I had responded to any number of people who had reached out to me. Look, I believe all 4 finalists had backgrounds that made them eligible for the position. We didn't choose the finalist, nor do we know the background of the 19 other people who didn't make it to the table in front of us. But of the 4 who did, they all deserve to be there. And in particular, because people reached out about this, Ms. Santos's background and her extensive public and private leadership and her service to this town and her clear and obvious love for the town certainly wouldn't rule out her eligibility for this position. It would be highly valued. And again, I would hope to think that if Ann had come before this board 17 years ago when you hired Steve, that she would have done just as fantastic a job building this town up in the past 17 years. My top 2 choices, however, are Liz Hartsgrove, and Denise Casey. Denise seems like a fantastic leader who is very well credentialed, Denise is our safe pick for me being blunt. Denise is the one who you would look at this and you would say, yes, she's that. In terms of Liz is sort of a talent. And when I look to hire you, you don't get somebody who's sort of that talented and that focused. And she's, to be fair, and this is, I guess, going public, she seemed nervous and shaky at the start of her interview. But the more she got talking about what she thought and what she could do, you got more and more confident in that she would successfully be able to lead the town. Felt exactly the same way about Denise Casey as well, in terms of not nervous, very, very well prepared, and very in-depth knowledge. And I'll give her credit for going to the Wakefield things, although, she lives much closer than the other 2, and I bet Ann was at most of those things as well. So, look, I think that those 2 would be my picks. And again, if we were doing ranked choice, I guess I'd probably go Liz above Denise, but we'll probably get to that style at some point.
Thank you. So I think I'm going to echo what everyone else has said. I was impressed by all 4 of the finalists. Each could easily do the job. They're all qualified, and each one meets the minimum qualifications as described in our town charter. It's insulting to think that any of them didn't. They all did. They all could do this job easily. So what I brought to this is my thought process on what I think the challenges are going to be after having been on town council. 8 years, in my 9th year, what are the upcoming challenges? For me, one is going to be budget. We're going into leaner financial times. That's the trend we're all seeing. We know many towns around us have had overrides and have had failed overrides, so there's just not enough money. We've been really fortunate, and we need a strong leader to keep us on the right track as part of a team. So one is financial. Second, we've kind of started implementing performance management into some positions. I'd like to continue this for all positions across town. I find it unique that we don't do more performance management and growth opportunities for our staff. The next TA has an opportunity to put some performance management and communication processes in place, which will make our town only stronger. So again, I believe all 4 finalists can do the job, but I want a TA who can start on day one with a fresh lens on how we have done things in the past and what the best practices are to incorporate to move forward. For these reasons, Denise Casey and Liz Hartgroves are my top 2 choices. Let's take a motion and further discussion, but do you have a
I move
motion?
that Denise Casey be appointed the next town administrator, subject to negotiations of salary.
Is there a second?
Second.
And then let's have a discussion.
I think the motion and both the second were wildly premature. Because I think, or we can have, again, I guess we can have the
So I
discussion.
think it's just a
between those
discussion.
two.
I was
But
hoping.
again, I guess my point on this is if we vote it down in terms of, I guess it leaves us in a dicey position. If we vote it down, can you then go back and vote for Denise subsequently?
Yep. Sure. I mean, I would also say, I think we should have the discussion, and, you know, if the output of the discussion is that we feel like we're landing somewhere else, then, you know, we could also
Pull the
withdraw the
motion,
motion.
but, yeah.
I think the intent is, you know, we're not going to vote right this second. I think the intent is to have a discussion.
I think we should have a
I'm assuming.
discussion. I do think, John, every single one of us had Denise in our top 2. But let's have a discussion.
Yeah, I think to be fair, I mean, and I had said this at the outset, I would rather talk to both of them again. My premise would be not to vote on hiring the next town administrator tonight. My preference would be to have a more in-depth meeting with those 2 individual candidates now that we know we're down to choosing between them. By the way, very happy with either. I think either candidate will be successful, but I'm not sure that. Again, and this also a lot of people reached out to me about, and I believe our search firm also said that it isn't typically done, but it seems odd to have one meeting with the person who you're presumably going to live with for the next 5 years in the most important position, when you probably wouldn't hire somebody working at Cravings on one meeting. So I think it's premature. It's premature for us to vote, but I also think it's premature for us to decide. That's sort of my first take on it.
So just some clarifications. The town charter says a 3-year, not a 5-year.
No,
So it'll be
we're
it'll be
hoping
3
for.
years. I don't know what else you would learn if I struggle with what else would be convincing or what else would be determinative if we were to bring them back in.
I think we got to talk vision with them before. We didn't really get into specifics with them. We had no, there was no questions that you would normally task someone with in a standard leadership interview in terms of having them walk you through a scenario or something along those lines. I'm not that I struggle with figuring out how they each would think, but I think that's the part that I don't have the best read on. And probably in particular Denise, I'd want to see how flexible sort of a mindset she had, and I'd want to get a better indication from Liz in terms of where each of them would focus us for the next year. what they would do in their first year. Now that they know that they would know that they're the finalists. Now you don't have to beat out 3 other people. You just have to beat one person, running up the tree from the bear.
The bear in this situation?
I think our emailers are the bear.
Councillor Chines.
No, just thinking about process. I certainly, at least in the questions that I asked, I did try to ask about scenarios to get at, some extent, sort of, I think some of this, some of the sort of what would you do if types of questions, did we do so as much in this process as we would, in kind of a standard job interview where you're not, you're also not doing a standard job interview in the public domain, right. With a television audience attending. So it is sort of already like a different process, and to some extent, not necessarily an ideal process, but it is what it is. In terms of just the ways you have to do a search when you're a public body like a town council. I certainly wouldn't say I think that there's harm in kind of, having another set of conversations. For me personally, I feel like I have what I need to understand where these 2 candidates are. I'm not sure that I would get any more out of, I shouldn't say I have what I need. I'm not sure that I would get any more that would necessarily change my perspective on them through another process. But again, that's just, one counselor's opinion.
And you both also had Liz as your top choice. So, yeah, you're in alignment there.
We're in alignment there. And I would also say I have a great deal of comfort with both of them. Like I said, I ended up in a place where I thought Liz would be, I thought Liz would be, really sort of like a game changer as a leader. I thought that she was, one of those talents that really you don't see very often. I think that Denise would also be incredibly good. So I don't feel that this is a bad choice. I don't, if we go with Denise as opposed to Liz, I don't think we're setting the town up for anything, negative in any way.
Celeste, is this the standard when you're doing a search for a town administrator, to have that 1 hour-long session with each candidate and then have a vote on it? That's being done around.
Come up to the microphone, Justin.
Oh.
John Petrin, Community Paradigm. What I see with the searches is it's about a 50-50 where the boards, the councils, and the select boards make a decision the night they interview. And then 50%, where they do like you did. They wanted a couple nights to think about it. But it's rare that we go to another session. It has happened maybe twice. It's rare to go to another session. If you feel you need that comfort level, then you need to, make sure you're comfortable. This is the biggest decision you make, as a council. So you need to be comfortable with that decision. So I don't want to tell you, it's right or wrong. It's not. It's getting to your comfort level and make a decision. If you're comfortable making a decision, you do that this evening. If you want another process, we can do that in a few weeks. Because you're running up against holiday at this point. So we can set something up. We can talk about what that might look like as well. That's your decision to make. But it would be rare, but I'm not saying it's wrong.
So along those lines, so applicants sent out stuff to you guys, you collected the references, you sent it to our search committee. I'm just trying to figure out, so if I have an interview, it's typically 4 rounds. The phone interview, maybe with HR, maybe with a manager, a hiring manager, maybe somebody else. So maybe, 4 or 5 different rounds. these candidates that we met with in the interviews have essentially done that process. We just saw the final piece.
Correct. So your screening committee met with each candidate for an hour.
Yep.
They reviewed that. You received, the reference checks, which were extensive, on each of those candidates. So it wasn't just one paragraph. There were, I have to check, but 2 pages, I think, of comments, that got to the, I think the bottom line of what you're seeking, for a candidate. And so we've been through that process. Again, now it's to your comfort level. Are you as individual, counselors ready to move forward with that, decision or not? If you need more information, we can talk about that. But if you're ready at that comfort level, that's for you to decide.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure nobody else. Counselor Chrisley, anything to add at this moment?
No, I don't believe I could add anything more than what we've already talked about as a council. But thank you.
Counselor.
The question I would have, because I'm comfortable with where we are right now. I totally understand the concern, and I feel like hiring in current years has moved toward multiple different rounds. It's been much more the standard. There have been a lot of rounds here, and I guess the question that I'm thinking about now as we're talking about it is substantively, would we learn anything new that would sway us one way or the other? Or would it just be more for a process checklist almost in our heads, or, just to satisfy that really and truly we did every single question that we possibly could think of? To some extent, hiring at any level, cravings or otherwise, is a bit of it's a leap of faith in some ways. And I'm sure everybody in this room has hired people that they felt very confident about, and it didn't work out. And then the flip was, you can also say that is true. So I'm just wondering substantively, if we go back and we do 1 hour with each of them, what would be the gain? And I don't know that there's enough of a gain there to go through that process.
Yeah, I guess my thing is, and I know we're talking about this and, potentially this all delaying things a month. I think, and again, I'm not certain of this. I just wanted to raise the issue.
Talk about it.
And I think, I guess one of my other concerns is I went back and I looked at 5 or 6 other recent towns, some that you did, some that some of your colleagues did, and they were almost all one round, one sort of finals. They were generally about an hour and a half versus an hour, and they were generally smaller boards. So if you think about we're a 7-person board, so it's probably answering the same number of questions, but I'm like, oh, did we hit all the things? And again, I got, and I wasn't sure if it was both Jonathan and I got criticized for being on our laptops during the thing, but I did manage to check, I was using it to make sure that, have we asked them from each of my stages of questions? Look, I think that's more my question for Mr. Petrin was in terms of what I saw from other bodies was sort of a much longer time period in terms of the interview process, and maybe they all said an hour and just went an hour and a half, but they didn't have Counselor Bott. She makes the trains run on time.
It's a priority not to have 5-hour meetings. So that was loud and clear from everyone.
Hallelujah.
I mean, I think and again, I think it is thinking about, Counselor Chines mentioned, it is really what are we, what's our next step is, I feel like, and by the way, it's what we think is best for the town, and that's the 7 of us have been tasked with this. So it's Denise, both feel excellent and will, I think, be able to get us through negotiations and everything else. Denise feels like she will be able to maintain some of the core tenor of the town and it's not a dramatic restructuring. And I don't think Liz is coming in here to, like, set the fields ablaze, but I do think she's a transformational leader. And it really depends on what are we looking for, what's sort of for our these next few years will probably set us up for the next 10. And I think we need to be cognizant of that and make sure that we're not sort of just hewing to the line. But that's sort of where
Councilor Chines. Sorry.
I just wanted to, so thinking about the question piece, one of the things that I kind of noticed, I had my list of questions that I came with, and I was actually pleasantly surprised that some variation of those questions, when I didn't get to them, everyone else did. And so, maybe we got fewer questions than if we were a 5-member board, but I feel like we covered the right ground in each of the interviews. We talked about leadership behaviors, we talked about communications and stakeholder engagement, we talked about finance with everyone. I could kind of go on and on down the list. So I do think, even though, we verbalized a smaller number of questions, I feel like I actually was impressed with kind of the ground that the 7 of us covered. Particularly given that it's not like we were, in a public body able to get together beforehand and coordinate questions. I think we still asked the right things. I think, Councillor Butler's point about, sort of transformational leadership is a good thing. And I think that's the big sort of distinction between these two individuals is, when you think about where we're going to go, I think both of them are individuals that are willing to challenge the status quo. I think both of them are individuals that are really willing and able to kind of look under the hood and make sure we preserve what's going well. And there's a lot that's going well. I think, when we talk about change, I don't want to undercut the fact that, we are coming from a place where, we do a lot of things really well in Wakefield, but like any community, like any organization, there are a lot of things that we don't do as well. And there are a lot of opportunities for improvement. I think that they would both look under the hood. I think maybe the level of urgency or creativity around the solutions that they would identify might be a little different for Liz than for Denise. But again, I think they would both bring that same mindset of, how do we take something that functions really well and make it better? I think Denise is, or Liz, I mean, would probably kind of take that to, a somewhat greater extent than Denise would. And I think that's where, this sort of transformational label comes into play.
Councillor Constance?
Throw a factor out. And this is a good discussion. And it's interesting to me that we are having this discussion with cameras rolling. It's just, I'm just not used to that part of this role. So, and I think both of these candidates are so compelling, and I think everything that everybody has said is extremely persuasive. And maybe don't answer the question, but one thing I think about is who can hit the ground running quicker. That was one of the factors I weighed in favor of Denise Casey. Is it just seemed so that she was in such a similar town, similar role. She had clearly done a lot of deep research about the town. How quickly can she get in there and get going versus a learning curve? And, I'm sure Liz would be up to speed extremely quickly. That's just a factor that I wondered about, throwing it out for consideration and thought.
Yeah, I think about that for both of them. I mean, agreeing with what everyone said, I think all of the candidates, I know we're not talking about all 4, but all could have hit the ground running and done the job. And I think these 2 in particular could do it and lead us in a good direction. I think about hit the ground running. I think they both can hit the ground running. I don't think there's going to be a tough onboarding for either one of them. What I've been thinking about lately, too, particularly this morning when I woke up, is when we have a new TA, there's actually going to be a responsibility of the 7 of us to help onboard that person. So we were really lucky with Steve for 17 years. He came from the council, from the select board, and did the job. Like, nobody had to explain things to him. And I think over the last 10 years, it was a lot of autopilot in a good way. Again, our town's in great shape. We all choose to live here for a reason. But we're going to have to do some onboarding of a new person, right? None of us have done that. John did it a long time ago, but again, it was different with Steve. And get that person up to speed, right? And just to what Councilor Butler said about their priorities, and we know about their vision, we set the vision, we set the policies, and the town administrator implements it and manages it. And I think we moved away a little bit from that equation. And I think when we have a new TA, we get to reset that a little bit, right? And we all talked about it, that there were some reports that have kind of gone to the bottom drawer, right? How do we make sure we keep those on track? And so, this is me talking to everyone. We're all going to be responsible for that. Like, when there's department head meetings, liaisons might go along with that. It's not just going to fall on me as chair. Like, I think it's all of us onboarding this person and talking about the vision that we vote on, that we want to see, and having a partner, and who's the best partner to help us implement that for the next 3 years that the contract says, not 5. So and again, I think both of them can do that. I think maybe Denise, because she knows the area, does it a little better. But I think if the motion was for Liz, I would probably go along with either motion. They're so close to me, and I think another round, I'm not going to get more information. And that's just because I think we were prepared. I think the search committee did a great job. Again, all the candidates can do this job. I think it really is going to go into a relationship with us and the person. And from the get-go, as we talk about, these are our priorities, this is what we need to work on, for the next year, the next 3 years, the next 5 years, and how are you going to help us best achieve those goals? Councilor Carney.
I want to bring the point up the fact that I think what you've been discussing is the fact that Denise knows all the players around here. She already knows all of the town administrators. She's in with them. And she has to move. We'd have to make it a requirement that she moves. She couldn't be commuting from the Cape, so that's going to take time. So when you talk about getting down quickly and getting going quickly, it's not going to happen quickly if I'm moving from Bourne up here, and that's a fact. That's not nothing against her personally. It's the fact that she was anxious to do that, but hitting the ground running is going to happen quicker with Denise. My point.
Councilor Fox.
I would say for Liz, she did say she would move to be here in this area.
Oh, she did?
Nope, she said that I believe her son is graduating high school in the next year, and her husband is retired. They have a plan in place. So if that was one of your concerns, there's nothing to worry about there.
I didn't mean there's a concern. I meant the fact it's going to take her time.
The time.
That's all. It was nothing.
No, that was one of the things she mentioned for,
Yeah.
I think Doug brought it up to her about the fact that she lives on the Cape, so.
Yeah.
I would point out, though, regardless of whom, start date is one of the things we'll have to negotiate. So that is a little bit of that's an unknown for any of the candidates, right?
Yeah, it's probably not a traditional 2-week notice like in other places.
Exactly, yep.
Yeah.
Councilor Butler.
I think one of the things, and this is to Councilor Constance, and everybody's talked about them hitting the ground running. One of the great things that we have is we still have Kevin here, and we have Kevin for the foreseeable, as long as you don't see too many years into the future. And I think that combined with, as Councilor Belt was saying, a reinvigorated sort of council and administrator approach, just because it will be somebody new who's coming in, who we had previously maybe fallen into a more mayoral approach than a town council approach. It wasn't that bad. No, it wasn't. But I can also, not withdraw my motion because I clearly didn't make one of those. But in terms of, I can get over the lack of a second round of interviews. I'm not gonna. That isn't a hill I'm gonna die on here. I think I'm confident that whoever comes on board but will be able to get up to speed in enough time to which they can, develop. The good news is also we don't have a ton of labor strife and whatnot facing us in the immediate future. Like, God bless Steve for leaving us in a good position there as well. And look, they were, as people have said, they were my top two candidates, and it is a very much, so I mean, I hate, if, not that I hate, but it becomes tough for, and this is where I'm going to tease you about the emotion, putting us in an awkward position of being excited, but maybe voting no. I mean, so that's where it feels of odds.
I think you're trying to talk yourself into this.
No, I'm not really talking myself in. I was pretty on board. I'm surprised that this is how it went, to be, not that surprised, but I'm somewhat surprised that this is how it went. This is not, this is not going to be a knockdown, drag out approach, as opposed to the way, I would imagine other decisions have to be. So this is nothing like, sampling.
I mean, it's nothing like decisions that boards have made in other communities around town administrators, which is great.
And again, I credit the search firm and I credit the search committee for getting us 4 really strong candidates, that this is not, there's going to be no wrong decision. And so I really credit that. And again, this has been a process. This has not been rushed. It has been deliberate and thoughtful. And with my colleagues, we have thought about every decision point, because we haven't done this for 17 years. And so, I do credit the volunteers. I mean, think back, we decided who we were, the makeup and how many members were going to be on that search committee and how many were going to be town employees. And Mr. Mullins didn't want to be on the search committee. He rejected us just like jazz music. He just said no. And I think, it wasn't going to be divisive because it's been deliberate and thoughtful the entire time. Councilor Carney.
Yeah, I want to compliment the chair on the process here. I think we've done a great job. The issue is, it was a unanimous decision by a prior council on the committee. And that was an accomplishment in itself. That we all voted unanimously on that committee. And I'd love to see a unanimous vote come out of here tonight.
Okay, any other further discussion on the motion?
Excuse me, this is this is John Carney's motion?
Yes.
And was that seconded?
Yes,
Yes, I had seconded.
Jonathan.
I think I'd like to hear from Councilor Carney what his thoughts on Liz Hartsgrove were.
On the what?
On Liz, I'd like to hear your thoughts on Liz, because you're the only one who didn't have her on your ballot. So, and granted for valid reasons in terms of.
I just think that the Cape is different. I think it's a different culture down there, and I sensed a difference there. I respect the fact that you folks saw, things in her that I didn't see. So I had nothing against her.
No, I just.
Yeah. I actually, I'm going to leave here tonight disappointed because, Ann was my first candidate.
Yeah.
So I put that on the thing. But the bottom line is, I think we have to work as a council, and we have to do the right thing for the town, and we will. And I think the thing that bothers me most, and somewhere in the future, when you all decide you want to take the time, I hate public participation. I hate that certain people can come in and destroy people on committees, and come out and make nasty statements and come to our meetings and speak out against things, although there was nobody tonight. It bothers me that these people exist out there that write letters to the item, although I don't very many people read the item anymore, and I make public statement on that. The fact is that it gets spread out. It's not right, the fact that they take a negative viewpoint of what we're trying to do. And I think professionally we were all professional today. We all talked, we decently talked about people. But when they come out and make nasty remarks about candidates or people, I don't want anything to do with those people. So Someday in the future, and if you've got an appetite for it, I'd like to get rid of, I know town council has always, recommended against it, because we can't stop anybody from speaking. If you allow people to speak, anybody can speak. It doesn't have to be a citizen of the town, it could be anyone from out of town, and that could expose us to things. But I think we run for office for a reason, and people can vote against us and then get rid of us, and then someone else takes over. Why should we let these people take a bit of our time at the beginning of a meeting and get an audience with the public criticizing us for the path we're taking? I just don't believe in it. Thank you. Sorry if I extended myself on that one.
No, and I think, when I started the remarks, I highlighted the opportunities that people have to reach all of us. We have emails. A lot of us put our cell phones out there. Social media is around, and people are going to post their opinions and their opinions. And so, I talk about this week, I had 7 emails, 7 total emails. If you read social media, you would have think that I was bombarded. 7 emails from the public about this process. So, I don't think it's public. It's not the public participation that you have an issue with. It's the ugliness of comments. And we can't stop that. I just ask that when we're in this room, we're respectful and thoughtful and know that we're all volunteers or staff, trying to do the best.
If you put it on the schedule for discussion sometime,
Yeah,
because
I'm happy to do that.
the last meeting, there was a gentleman here who concerned about his business.
Yep.
And we were holding him. I would have put him up on the table, said, you want to discuss it with us? Because it was something impacting his business. I called in with a valid point, a proven valid point, to Traffic Advisory Committee meeting and told them there wasn't enough room on the lake to put valid. I measured it, I had all the facts. They held me to 2 minutes. Come on. In those times, you should be listening to the public. You ought to listen and try to solve the public's problem. We're having people up here making statements about things that has nothing to do with them. It's their own opinions.
So we will add public comment to a future agenda. Thank you, John.
I'm sorry, I'm taking up too much time.
No. We have a motion and a seconded, so I just want to make sure we wrap up that. Any further discussion on the motion and the seconded? Jonathan.
Just very, very, very briefly, regardless of the 2 individuals we're talking about, regardless of which one they pick, I do think whatever community ends up hiring the other one will be very, very fortunate. And so, in my professional life, we always think about, when we have really good candidates, where can we slot them into other places? That's not the case, obviously, here. We have one town administrator role, but I would say, John, for the next search that Community Paradigm does, one of these individuals will be a great fit somewhere. And, while it's unfortunate that it won't be here, hopefully to be a community that we work with very closely and we'll get to benefit from their expertise there.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, I'm going to take a roll call vote. Councillor Chrisley.
Can you can you just repeat what the motion is?
Yeah,
So
and
it's
did
clear.
we have specific language we had to use for the motion?
We did. I think that John actually got
Did it? Yeah.
Yep.
Can you repeat it for Councillor Chrisley?
I move that Denise Casey be appointed the next town administrator subject to negotiation on the salary.
Councillor Chrisley.
Yes.
Councillor Fox.
Yes.
Councillor Constance.
Yes.
Councillor Butler.
I'm sorry. No.
Councillor Carney.
Yes.
Councillor Chines.
Yes.
And myself is yes.
You did a horrible job of talking yourself into it.
I was reluctant. I was a reluctant no. Denise, I loved you. You'll enjoy working with me, and you'll recognize that this is not a unique instance.
Moving on to item 6. So now we have to appoint a contract subcommittee, and the subcommittee will finalize the contract and bring it back to us. And we'll probably have a meeting soon, probably a Zoom meeting to approve the contract once the contract subcommittee has come up with it. But we'll do it. We can, once we have a draft to look over. I think waiting till September 8th maybe is a little too long, according to John. So if we can do it sooner, the better.
Takes, but
Yeah, and so I'm hoping the subcommittee can work with our town solicitor and get a contract ready to go. So do I have anyone that would like to be on the contract subcommittee? Counselor Constance, Counselor Chines. Do I have a third person? Counselor Carney, great. So you are appointed. Do I have to vote on a subcommittee? I do. Yes. Okay. Do I have a motion to appoint the...
Yes, Madam Chair, move to create a town administrator contract subcommittee consisting of myself, Counselor Constance, and Counselor Carney.
Second.
Seconded by Stacy. Thank you so much. Any further discussion? Understand the deliverables, so you'll let us know when you have a draft. We have something to work off of. And then I think we can schedule something to approve it, so we get that to the candidate as soon as possible. Counselor Chrisley.
The roll call vote, Madam
Yes.
Chair?
Yeah, we have to take a vote.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Counselor Fox.
Yes.
Counselor Constance.
Yes.
Counselor Butler.
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Chines.
Yes.
And myself is yes. Thank you. I'm looking at the schedule. I think we are going to make a motion to adjourn. Our next regular town council meeting is Monday, September 8th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Great. Roll call vote. Counselor Chrisley.
Yes.
Counselor Butler doesn't like when I don't do this. So Counselor Chrisley said yes. Counselor Fox.
Yes.
Counselor Constance.
Yes.
Counselor Butler.
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Chines.
Yes.
And myself. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned. Next town council meeting September 8th. Thank you, everyone.